So if you've had an ego death, you had this thing happen, it was crazy. Maybe you ate some mushrooms, however it came about, but you go online trying to figure out what the hell just happened to you, and you realize it was an ego death. And now you're kind of split from yourself, and your personality is now nothing that you're dressed in, but kind of some clothes you got in your closet, and you're standing there butt naked looking down, and you don't know what to do, and you can't put those clothes back on, and they don't fit like they used to. An ego death is something that, you know, is induced often by psychedelics, and it happens real blunt and fast, and it just blows your mind. And slowly, like a snow globe, it falls back into place. But also sometimes your life circumstances and life itself just hits you over the head so many times as you try to put back on these shoes of the person you're trying to be. And it forces you to put down who you're trying to be. And you got to go through this period or stage of reform and reconstructing this new version of yourself, separate from it, before you can go back to identifying with it and having this, you know, personality, this person that's for other people. And I want to talk about the ego death for a minute, because there's very little beyond realizing that's what's just happened that's going to help you, you know, move forward with your emotional state and with the relationship you have with yourself alongside a societal role. You know, the ego's not such a bad thing, but when we do have an ego death, it's because our ego has got a lot of muck in it. You know, half the time I hear people talking about the ego, they're completely and utterly sitting in the subjective seat of it, acting like they're pointing at this thing that is the ego from the seat of their ego. The ego is one of these things, dude, that you use it to construct an idea of what an ego is. You use your ego. And if you have a good enough idea, when your ego dies, that kind of falls into place, that understanding. But, you know, as soon as you truly point a finger at the ego in a circumstance of a real understanding, it's going to be at your own ego. You're no longer sitting in the seat of it, and you've had an ego death, and you're kind of split. Your identity crisis takes place. And there's a real battle, and it's for balance. You know, the first ego we wind up dressing ourselves with is really around the idea of our name, and it's for other people. And we're being for other people, and maybe it dies because of psychedelics, or maybe it slowly dies because we can no longer meet the needs of other people and what other people want of us, and we lose our self-satisfaction because our approval is so heavily weighted on their approval of us. And we can no longer, you know, suit the fancy, what everybody wants of us, and we kind of drift back and fall back into this place we came from. The place we initially pointed at is around our name, like I said, and said, oh, that's who I am, and got slipped up into this subjective seat of the ego. And there's a real important thing to do that is a pivot away from reconstructing your ego in a way that is for other people. And you've got to learn from the point post-ego death to reconstruct your ego in a way that is for yourself, that you don't need other people's approval and satisfaction to be okay with yourself. And at the end of the day, everybody's going to act like they hate you for it because they're looking for this person that you were. But they'll gain a newfound respect for you on the backside when that's what really everyone wants from everyone, is to be themselves. And they fight it. As you're going through that process, other people in your life might fight it and fight you and become kind of an enemy. But that's because it's such a truth, and it's such a thing that's common for human beings. And that they've had these experiences, and they are aware, their ego is aware of what's going on, and they don't want to go through and fight the battle that you're fighting. And if you fight it, you know, they kind of feel obligated to, I believe. So if you have an ego death, and if you can't just slip back into the seat of the ego that has died, and you're kind of separate and lost and having an identity crisis, and before you get back to trying to see how everyone wants, what shirt everybody wants you to wear and who everybody else wants you to be, that's who you're trying to be, and you got to put that down. And you got to reconstruct yourself and your personality, this character of yours in this story of life that you tell yourself. You've got to reconstruct it in a way that is for you, aside from what everyone else wants out of you. And you will become much more stable, unbreakable. Other people will not be able to bear the weight it's required to bring you to your knees ever again. And I don't know what freedom is exactly, but that's freedom from other people. So it's a great opportunity. You know, it feels like shit, it feels like depression. And there is a stage of hard work and emotional stress you got to go through to find some stable ground from there. But man, if you can rebuild yourself in a way that, like I said, is for you, and we're empathetic. Human beings are empathetic beings, and we do care about other people. And in that reconstruction of yourself for you, other people will be built into it. You know, you're not going to completely disregard other people, but you're also this time not going to completely disregard yourself.